Welcome to another episode of EpicEarth, a podcast for those curious about the STEM fields and the awesome, quirky, and fun experiences and research that is taking place right now. This is episode number 2, Babbling Brooks and Roaring Rivers. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride as we take a journey around this epic Earth.
Welcome back to another episode of EpicEarth podcast. My name is Ashley Bosa, and today I have joining me Brian Rosenblatt.
Hey, how's it going?
And the person we're interviewing, which is Scott Gauvain.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Scott. So Scott is a master's student, or he will be a master's student here at Boise State University starting this fall. He graduated from Boise State. He's another alum here with his BS in geophysics. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you will be doing a master's in geophysics here. Is that correct?
Yes, just signed the contract.
Nice. We like to hear it. And you will be working with Jake Anderson, who is I think he got promoted to a different level, but he was a research scientist here at Boise State.
Yeah, I will be his first master's student. I'm not sure what his title is, but research scientist sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. He's very lucky to have you, and Jake's a great person to have as a mentor.
He's an incredible mentor. He knows so much about everything, like computers, rivers, volcanoes, everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's really, really smart. So Scott has a few accolades. He's presented a lot as an undergrad at a couple of student showcases here at Boise State, something the undergrad department puts on. And that was in volcanoes, is that correct?
Yeah, similar to Brian, I was able to go to Villarrica in Pucón, Chile, and set up a bunch of sensors in the field and work with the data that I got to actually collect, which was super cool, experience as an undergrad. I started just working in this lab, building these microphones, soldering, 3D printing enclosures, and learning a lot about installing hardware and programming. And then I got an opportunity to go to Chile and do research, and I've been actively working on a paper right now on how the atmosphere influences volcanic signals, like what Brian mentioned in our first episode.
Wow, that's really cool. But you started that as an undergrad here at Boise State, correct?
Yeah, I'm very lucky to get that opportunity.
Yeah, that's awesome that you have research under your belt already as an undergrad. What a cool thing. So your master's research will not involve volcanoes, though. Is that correct?
No, I'm using a similar tool, acoustics, to study rivers, and the sounds they produce can tell us information about stream flow, including hopefully accurate results that coincide with stream gauge data, which tells you discharge and flow velocity actively of a stream.
So you're going to use it as a back check for some of these stream flows,
basically,
stream gauges?
Kind of, yeah, like a back check, but it's really like a cheaper way to do it. These sensors we make can be produced very cheaply compared to a stream gauge that has to be monitored. It has to be placed in a river, which can disturb the environment. So this is a cheaper, non-invasive method if it works correctly. We're basically assessing whether it is feasible with this project.
That's awesome. And I assume that it's much easier to monitor as well. I don't know if anyone knows or has done any river work before, but usually when you calculate discharge and things like velocity and things like that, it's actually a lot of work.
Yeah, I took a class as an undergrad where we had to do that. You were in it with me.
Yeah.
You remember. We're just trudging in waders through a river, trying not to get swept away.
Right.
Sticking all these probes in, measuring the velocity. You have to measure the what's called the wetted perimeter of the river. It's literally what it sounds like, the perimeter, the area, the length of the river that's wet. And then you have to do a bunch of calculations and you get the discharge. But
Yeah.
we would just be doing that without getting in the river and saving people time and money.
And also not having to get as intimate with riparian environments. So for those of you out there, riparian environments are all the vegetation along rivers. And especially here in Boise, along some of our watersheds, there's a lot of thorn bushes, rose bushes, and other things which just are trying to stab you all the time. So that was a fun day out, though. But cool. So I have to say, so one of the things that sort of, I guess, I don't know, we're kind of like attracted in this department to our kin. But so Scott, you are a former Coloradan, is that right?
Yes, I am. I grew up in Evergreen, Colorado, graduated from Evergreen High School, 2015. It's a tiny little mountain town west of Denver.
That's awesome. I'm also from Colorado. So, yeah, I think we just had a mutual sort of, I don't know what you would call it, a mutual similarity. Like
bond.
Unspoken bond.
Yeah, an unspoken Colorado bond.
Everyone in this department seems to gravitate towards each other. Well, that's really cool. And so, do you have anything in your background you'd like to tell us? You didn't originally start as a geophysics major, is that correct?
That's correct. I, as an 18-year-old, like most 18-year-olds, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So, I don't know, I first wanted to study like dentistry or optometry, and then I was like scared of science. So I was like, all right, business, that sounds easy. 2 years into that, I decided I was not for me. I just didn't like it at all, honestly. So I took a year and a half off of school, worked a couple jobs, and saved up, and then actually went out and solo traveled for about 4 months alone, backpacking South America.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an experience. Where did you go?
I started in Peru, made my way south, saw Machu Picchu, did like a 5-day trek to Machu Picchu. Incredible. Like some of the best days of my life down there. Then I did Ecuador, about 6 weeks there, and then I did northern Chile and Argentina.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a great experience, especially at that age. But
yeah,
you saw a lot.
21.
Wow.
Or 20 to 21 was when I did it. Yeah.
So are you fluent in Spanish then?
Más o menos. I wouldn't say. I would say like 50-60%. Like I can understand a lot of conversation and converse effectively, but there's still like when people speak really quickly, you're like. Or they don't enunciate very well, I'm still kind of confused sometimes, so not fully, but
Could you give a full research presentation in Spanish?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know about full. I would try. Luckily science in Spanish is like there's a lot of cognates in scientific language, like infrasound is infrasonida, there's stuff like that. Like I could probably get it but it would be broken in parts.
But enough for people to understand.
Probably.
You, hopefully.
And laugh a little bit.
Yeah. Well, that's always a goal. We like to make people smile.
Yes, so. Of course.
So getting back to your research a little bit, what got you interested in this field of study? I know you've sort of talked a little bit about it.
Yeah, when I was in Ecuador, I climbed a volcano called Tungurahua, and it was just like I came back from that, I was like, wow, I was so motivated. I was like, I can do anything. Like, I guess at the same time, I was developing this passion for physics. Like, I was reading a lot of Stephen Hawking. I was reading a collection of Albert Einstein's memoirs. They were both just, those two are probably what really inspired me to get into science. So I was like, okay, physics is really cool, and I love being outside. And then I was coming back to school at the time, because I started with a community college foundation in math, because I was like, I do not remember how to do math. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't do math over years, like, you're gonna forget math. So I went and did that, and then a guy in my class actually was like, I'm doing geology. Like, I like rocks and I like being outside. And I was like, I wonder if there's something I can do there. And then I looked into Boise State's programs, and they had a geophysics emphasis, and I was like, that sounds perfect.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What a cool segue into it. I love like the variety of backgrounds that a lot of us come from.
Yeah.
It's not always like we know exactly what we want to do when we're 18 years old.
Right.
It's that we have to go and find ourselves in the world and then come back to something.
Yep, that's a lot of non-traditional students here, and I think that's what makes our department so strong. Like, a lot of good people that have been through a lot.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a great place to be. So you're currently working on some research with Jake. You haven't officially started your master's program yet, but you guys have started doing some of this research on the rivers. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the sensors that you use and some of the other equipment that you're using in order to get that data?
Sure, yeah. My advisor, Jake, he built a custom data logger called the GEM that traditional microphones, the infrasound microphones, this is an infrasound microphone, can be used in a similar way to volcanoes, where it's basically anything that is large and produces a lot of energy will probably produce infrasound. So rivers produce infrasound, especially hydraulic jumps, which are like when flow sort of transitions from smooth to either not smooth, or it just jumps. So these are what we're focusing on. We're trying to find a correlation between the sound produced by a feature such as a waterfall or a rapid. We're trying to correlate how that sound relates to the acoustic power, which then we can attribute that to a discharge.
Wow, yeah.
And so the infrasound microphones are helpful, but we also use audio and ultrasound microphones called an audio moth. So we've been setting those up and locating them in the same place as an infrasound microphone to see like the full sound spectrum that a river produces, because it's not as typical as or I would say narrow banded in the sound compared to a volcano. A volcano produces a very narrow band of sound.
Yeah, very peaked signal.
Mm-hmm. But the river is less so. Like, looking at the data now, there's a lot more peaks in the frequency content. So there's a lot of different sounds we have to try to measure.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me too. Like, walking along a river, you hear all these different river sounds.
Mm-hmm.
They don't all just sound like one droning.
That's
It's
true.
like a white sound with a lot of different frequencies coming through.
Totally.
True. Like a ripple sounds different to a waterfall, for example, or even like a laminar, which means it's flowing pretty non-turbulently, so it's flowing kind of almost in a straight path. So it might be really quiet at that point.
Yeah,
It's really
exactly.
interesting.
Yep.
Have you noticed where sounds are most dominant in things like hydraulic jumps? And for those of you who don't know what hydraulic jumps really are, we've probably all experienced them. So on a river, a hydraulic jump can be something like a rapid, which is produced. Or if you're not familiar with rapids, just go to your sink and turn on the faucet, and you will see a hydraulic jump. As the water hits the bottom of the sink, it creates a ring around that water flow, and that's because the water is flowing faster out of the faucet and hits the bottom of the sink and hits friction basically, and so it slows the flow of water, so it creates like this ring around. So go try that now, and don't leave your water running for too long. We don't want to waste water, but especially in this drought, but it's a fun little experiment to see. That's what a hydraulic jump is. So sorry, any dominant sounds coming from hydraulic jumps or other water sources that you've noticed?
Dominant sounds. I think I haven't looked at that specifically yet, but my theory is that waterfalls are going to produce more infrasound, and then which is the low frequency because they have more energy. It's a huge waterfall, like Niagara Falls would be. Oh my God, that would be so loud. Probably in all frequency bands, but primarily the low frequency, high energy infrasound. I would assume, and then riffles and rapids are probably going to be more audible because you can hear them, and you can clearly hear them. Like a waterfall, a powerful one, like it's almost so loud that you can't really distinctly hear it. So that's my theory.
That's really interesting though, because it basically sounds like you're saying the geometry is dictating the sounds that it makes, similar to a lot of other acoustic properties. So
yeah,
those bigger waterfalls will have deeper noises, whereas smaller waterfalls will have higher pitched noises.
Yeah,
and whatnot.
That's what we're trying to confirm, but that's our theory.
Cool.
Yeah, it's for geometry. For rivers, we use a term called geomorphology. Like the features have a geomorphology, meaning they have a characteristic shape to them that changes over time based on flooding, drought. So it's basically controlled by precipitation. And when I have an interesting fact, the difference between a creek and a river is a creek starts to collect runoff. And it forms kind of like a channel. And then a river is defined by multiple creeks converging while flowing downhill to form a larger body of water. So that was just something I was like, what's the difference between a creek and a river? Like, how do we define it? It's not exactly like, there's no like value that you're like, it has to be this wide. It's just like the confluence of multiple streams or creeks is a river.
That's
so that was interesting.
Yeah, I guess I never knew that either.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah.
So is there a difference between a stream and a river, or are all streams and creeks, are all creeks and rivers streams?
That's a tough question. I think a stream and a creek are kind of like the same thing. They're just not primary. They're smaller and they're at the beginning stages of water transitioning to the ocean, like flowing downhill. Something that I feel like a lot of people might not know is that all water just from rivers flows into the ocean. So when when people are leaving trash around, like that's how it ends up in the ocean. Like, so please don't litter. But
point of that is don't litter.
Yeah, trash will end up in the ocean if you don't pick it up. So
I think that's a legit request, actually.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, that sounds like really cool research. I'm excited to see what you come up with over the next couple of years with that.
It's exciting. Yeah, like this summer has been a massive amount of data collection. We have the Boise River that runs through here. And there's a surf spot that we're primarily focused on called Whitewater Park, and they changed the wave configuration weekly to accommodate surfers or kayakers, but the discharge or the flow velocity remains the same. Well, maybe not the velocity, but the discharge will remain the same. They're just changing this geometry of this wave. So a few weeks ago, you guys were both involved. We had a huge deployment of a ton of different sensors to try to capture what the sound changed, how the sound changed when they changed that configuration of that wave. That'll be a big part of the research.
Wow, super cool.
It's awesome.
And you are using these acoustic cameras as well, is that correct?
Oh yeah, we rented something called an acoustic camera. It's a device that has a camera in the middle, and then it has, I want to say, like 30 to 50 microphones encircling the camera to co-locate the sound with a visual from the camera. So we would just literally power it on, aim it at like a river feature, and we would see like where the sound is coming from, and you could adjust the frequency band. So we saw some really interesting stuff. It was actually pretty intuitive. Like most of the sound strongly was generated most strongly when the water itself that was in the like a hydraulic jump, when it interacts with the surrounding water, it just kind of perturbs the atmosphere and produces the sound in that way. Like it's water interacting with flowing water interacting with more still water that produces most of the sound. That's what I saw.
Very cool.
That was fun to use.
It seems like a really fun technology. And for those of you out there listening, you can actually go watch YouTube videos of these acoustic cameras. They're super just fun to see, that you can locate sounds just based off of a load of microphones, which is very cool. Okay, so our next question, I think Brian's going to ask it. He has a really serious question for you.
All right, so you originally told us that you were a business major, correct?
Yeah.
And now you're doing science stuff, so welcome to the good side from the bad side. So Jeff Bezos approaches you.
I run.
Good, end of the question. No, Jeff Bezos approaches you. He says he needs a business idea for something that they're going to do on the moon. He can get whatever equipment you need. He just needs the business idea. What's your business idea here? Some kind of combination of science and business that'll attract scientists and tourists to the moon. Whatever your idea may be.
Well, I don't think my ideas will attract tourists, but like I kind of want to take it to like, let's drill for oil on the moon.
Oh, wow.
Let's do that, and let's find out how to do it cheaply and effectively, and then let's also, like, let's just send all of our trash to the moon. Like, I know some of the moon environmentalists are going to be mad by that, but let's clean up Earth, and let's use the moon as our gigantic trash can. Kind of. I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. It's a tough question.
How would you get it to stay on the moon, though? You put it in, like, containers?
I would, like, put it in containers and then just kind of, like, once it reaches, once we gather a ton, like, multiple tons of trash, like, we just kind of launch it into space right at the moon. Why not? Like, I don't know.
Oh, man, a big trash ball orbiting our planet. Well, I'll give Jeff Bezos a call and see what he says about that.
Oh, you know him?
Yeah, personally.
You might want to invest. Travel to the moon with the trash.
Yeah.
Just to make sure it gets there.
I mean, it's got to all get there. So.
Right. Do you have any fun stories from the field? Either, recently, obviously you talked about this big project that you just did at the Whitewater Park, but even from your undergrad days?
Yeah, actually this summer, I got a chance to go with Ashley. Ashley's getting her PhD studying volcanic mud flows called lahars, and I was a part of the team that got to go down with her, and I got to see this amazing volcano called Volcán de Fuego, which it just erupts, like always. It's just constantly spewing ash into the sky. Like, so that, getting to see that for the first time, like we were just driving there for a field day, and we stopped and we looked at the volcano and it just started erupting, and I was like, whoa. It just blew my mind to see a volcano like that just actively erupting, like, and everyone's just like normally going about their day. It's like
it's true. No one's bothered by it down there.
It's so weird. Like, it was shaking our windows in our hotel. It was, when we were up closer to it, it would boom, and we would feel the shockwave it produced, and just it would scare us a little bit. So that was that was cool. That was one of my best memories out in the field. But in terms of my river research, just like walking in the river in these over 100-day Boise heat.
Oh yeah.
This heat wave we're going through right now, just being on the river, like, is awesome. Like, I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing like working around water when it's 100 degrees outside.
Yeah, I'm so lucky.
That's super awesome. So we're going to get into this part of our podcast where we ask you to describe your research to 3 different groups of people
Oh, right.
as succinctly as you can. We actually call this the elevator pitch here in our department. Of course, we always joke that it's the longest elevator ride you'll ever take. 600 stories, this
Elevator
building.
to the moon to get rid of our
Yeah.
trash. That's my idea, Jeff.
There you go. So how would you describe your research to an elementary class?
5th grader.
Okay, okay. I haven't thought about this much.
I know, you're kind of new to your research,
Yeah.
so this is a good way to start thinking about how you're going to present your
Right.
papers.
So, you've all been to, okay, hello class. You've all been to rivers, and you've probably never really noticed that they make sound, though. They're always flowing at peak times of the year. They'll flow more. Like when we get more rain, the rivers collect them. The rivers collect that rain, and we can use that change in water content to forecast floods or we want to measure basically how fast the river goes so that we know like how much water we have, where we will use that water, because rivers can use water to generate power so that we can all have electricity in our homes, so you all can play video games or whatever you want to do.
Or how fast it's going if you want to float the Boise River, is
Yes,
that right?
or if you want to float down it safely and not get flown into some trees or.
Oh, God. Doesn't happen often, people, don't
No,
worry.
it's safe. But yeah, I am studying the sounds that the river makes and trying to find if using the sounds to monitor the river is a good idea, and if it can be done better than what we usually do, which is going in the river with a big stick, electronic stick, and measuring the flow. So we're using a different method to achieve the same result as river monitoring.
Great. It's harder when you're like trying to make your research sound interesting to different people, isn't it?
Yeah.
So our next group of people are a little bit older. They're either in high school or they're like an undergraduate student who is not related to our field, doesn't know anything about the geoscience field.
Undergrad.
Okay. Yeah, if I were to go back to Evergreen High and give a presentation to my favorite science teacher, Miss Manning.
Shout out.
To her earth science class. Shout out to Cheryl Manning. I would say, honestly, it would be pretty similar, but I would say rivers produce acoustic sound. I am measuring it with specialized microphones in multiple bands of frequency. Frequency is how many oscillations a wave. Picture a line just going up and down, making like a cosine or a sine wave.
Mm-hmm.
How many oscillations does that go through per second? That is something called a frequency. So we use the frequency content of the river sounds to say something about the discharge, which is the amount of water moving past a single spot per second or per unit of time. So we're using different frequency of sound to determine what the stream or the river is doing and how it is changing over time.
Very cool. And the last person that you have to convince your research is super awesome is a professional at one of the conferences that you'll probably be attending here shortly.
Expert.
Yeah, okay. So whitewater sounds have been studied before, but their utility is unknown and their practicality is unrefined. So our study aims to refine practices in acoustic stream gauging, as we call it. Traditionally, as we know, stream gauging is invasive and may harm the riparian landscape. This method, if proved effective, will eliminate that and hopefully achieve similar results in accuracy to stream flow characteristics such as velocity, discharge, over time especially. Yeah, that's what we're primarily interested in. How does that change seasonally, and how does that change biannually?
Yeah, great.
Like,
Yeah, really.
Like El Nino and La Nina years, we're probably going to see a different acoustic power signature.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That was a really great description. I think, for someone who's just going into their master's program, being able to describe your research is really important and effective, but you did a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for answering those questions.
Yeah.
So we're going to get on to some other questions now. So what percentage of the Earth's water is in rivers, is in lakes, is in the ocean?
Oh yeah. Okay. So it's zero. Okay. Rivers are it's very small percentage of our water. The ocean has, I want to say, 96.5% of our water on Earth. So 2.5% is classified as fresh water, and then another 0.9% or 1% is called like saline water, which is, I think it's more like
Be like clouds and whatnot, or
yeah, probably. I didn't look into that, but of that 2.5% of the entire water on Earth that is fresh, rivers are a very small amount of that. In total, for all of the Earth's water, rivers are 0.0002% of all of our water.
Wow.
And something interesting that I learned recently is that there's 4 times as much water stored just in swamps than there are flowing in rivers.
Oh, wow.
I was like, wow, like where is all that? Like Florida? Like
Louisiana,
yeah,
probably.
I don't know. That was a crazy statistic.
Oh, wow, that is really crazy.
And I have another fact if you
Go
would,
ahead,
yeah.
absolutely. We love the facts.
68.5% of all fresh water is stored in something called the cryosphere, which is snow and ice.
Mm.
So
like
we get
glaciers, right?
Yeah, glaciers. Just in Boise, we have a lot of our water comes just from the snow and the foothills. Like, so as climate changes and we start losing snow per year, like, we're gonna lose some water. So yeah, we got to be mindful of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're more aware of it now as well because we're, in such a drought and we're not seeing as much snowpack develop every year, so it's kind of a scary time.
Yeah.
Our next question is, what's the largest river basin on Earth? Do you happen to know that?
God, I do not know that.
If you had to
If
guess.
I had to guess.
In fact, can you just describe what a river basin is to us?
I think a river basin is, I want to say it's like the watershed that follows a river. A watershed is defined as the area which collects rainfall, and all that rainfall flows downhill into streams and rivers. So I would say the basin of the river is probably the watershed of a given river. I don't know. I want to say like the Ganges or maybe the Mississippi. I'm gonna do a quick Google. I'm embarrassed. I don't know it.
That's okay. That was kind of an unfair question. Threw you in there. Do you have an analogy for the work that you're going to be doing with rivers? If there's something that you could expound to people out there about what you do and how it relates to life.
Oh, yeah. Rivers, well, I don't know if it's not really an analogy, but something I have started thinking a lot more recently about is how rivers are so essential to life. So, like, there's no coincidence that cities are built, like, near rivers. Like, a lot of people think that rivers might just flow through cities and it might be a coincidence, but no, like, we use rivers to generate power. We treat our sewage using rivers, like, we treat waste. We do a lot with rivers. I guess an analogy is, like, rivers are going to flow from the path of most resistance to least resistance, and potentially we are analogous to a river in that, life, challenges may seem hard at first, but, like, as you continue to flow through them, they will get easier and you'll go on your path to least resistance. Wow, that was
I love that. That was great. Everyone feels so much more enlightened now. That was a really great analogy.
And then the previous question, I Googled the answer. It's Amazon, of course. The Amazon River Basin is the biggest in the world.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Forgot about that.
Well, you're not in South America right now, so
no,
it's
unfortunately
okay.
not.
Okay, we have one last question for you, and then we're going to let you go.
Okay.
Kind of random, very serious, but what are your thoughts on garden gnomes, Scott?
Garden gnomes. Weird. Like people actually buy these? Like, I guess I get it. Like, it's like a cute little thing to put in your garden to ward off animals, right? Like,
I think so.
So that animals don't eat your crops or your garden. I like it. I'm actually, now that I think about it more, I'm totally
You're
for
into
garden
it.
gnomes. Yeah.
You don't think there could have been a better mythical creature they could have used besides a gnome?
I think they totally could have, but
Yeah.
I guess I like the concept. Yeah. In theory,
Wizards.
but yeah.
Set up
wizards.
your whole Lord of the Rings outfit out front in your garden.
Yeah.
Garden wizards.
That's a great question.
Well, Scott, we really appreciate you coming on today and being thrown a lot of random questions about your research, which we're very excited to see what comes out of it in the next couple of years. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
It was a great time. I'd love to shout out my girlfriend, Caitlin Machamp. She designed our EpicEarth logo on our website. Check it out. It's awesome.
She's awesome.
She is awesome as well. Shout out to her. Shout out to everyone who has mentored me. Shout out to my parents, my family, just all of you guys as well. Ashley and Brian, thanks for having me. Thanks for involving me in your guys' research.
Yeah.
Brian's paper is published or in review for publication right now.
Yep, that's right.
Brian was nice enough to give me some work to do, so I got my first authorship through him. So thanks to Brian. Yeah.
Cool.
Go
Awesome.
geoscience.
Yeah,
Thanks,
man.
Scott. You're awesome. You rock, and we look forward to your research.
Thanks. You too. Yeah.
Well, that was an epic conversation.
We'd like to thank all of our listeners.
Tune in next time for another Epic Earth podcast.